January is a bittersweet month for me. It's sweet because it's normally the coldest month for us Florida gardeners, which is the best. I love gardening in cold weather, as cold as it can be for Florida. It's literally my favorite thing to do, but it's sad because January is the halfway point of my favorite garden season, which is fall and winter. I suspect this is how northern gardeners feel when fall starts to approach, the end of the big gardening season. We are lucky though because we do get to grow all year round, but I'm going to miss broccoli. It's nearly impossible to grow broccoli in late spring, early summer. It is my very favorite vegetable to eat. Interestingly enough, though, it's actually not my favorite vegetable to grow. I enjoy it, but my favorite to grow would probably be sweet potatoes because it's like digging up presents. Or winter squash. I don't know why I have an obsession with growing winter squashes, but I really have an obsession with it. It's funny that my two favorite vegetables don't actually grow at this time of year. I'm in Central Florida in Zone 9A. Up until this point of all my previous monthly videos, we always talked about North Florida ahead of my growing schedule and South Florida being behind, but that actually switches this time of year. South Florida is going to warm up quicker, so things like tomatoes and peppers, they're actually could be started like last month or right now. But those guys in North Florida, you guys are actually now a month behind me. You won't be starting your tomatoes and peppers until next month because your cooler weather will hang on a bit longer and you still could get like frost and freezes. So that's a really important switch for us, and that won't change again until we're in the middle of summer. So we do this flip-flop thing twice a year. So knowing that, let's jump right into what I'm growing this month in my garden. Then I'll tell you about the projects I have going on this month. Make sure that you stay to the end of the video because I have a special tip for the month, which I always do, and also a fun little giveaway for 3 of my viewers. So you don't want to miss that. Really quick before we get right into the vegetables that we're growing, I wanted to ask you guys if you would be interested in a live stream. So that would be me popping on live and really answering your questions one-on-one. I know some people are really into that and other folks don't really do live streams. So I wanted to know what you wanted and if you would be interested in that, and if you would, if you leave me a comment, if I get enough people who are interested, I will start looking into how to do that. It feels like we just got rid of all our warm season crops, which is true. I still have some squash and tomatoes in my garden, but it's that time to start thinking about growing those. The UF website does say we should be starting all our warm season crops this month, but for me, I usually break these into 2 types of warm season veggies. The long growing ones versus the ones that need to be direct seeded. So that'd be your tomatoes and your peppers are the long growing ones that are transplanted. And then things like squash, melon, corn, and cucumbers that need to be direct seeded. For the long season plants that do good with transplanting, like those tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, I'll be starting those in trays now. But I actually like to wait till later in the month of January or early February before I start direct seeding my other warm season crops because it's still very possible for us to have a frost that could kill them. I remember last year we got a frost, or I got a frost, on March 15th. It doesn't happen that late normally, but it actually is our last projected frost date. It literally hit on the day. It was according to the date of our last projected frost, which I think is the Farmer's Almanac. And I had to scramble and cover a bunch of things. Still, a lot of stuff died that I had recently planted. So then I had to start over, which is fine with me. I don't mind that. But instead of fighting against that, I like to take a wait and see approach with these. The tomatoes and peppers and trays, I can easily protect those from a frost by putting them in my shed or bringing them inside. But if they're direct seeded in the beds, they may have a much harder time. So that's something to think about. Do you have the time to cover up if we get a late frost or even any frost in January? I have the time. I just hate covering things. It's such a pain in the butt and it's stressful. I sit up all night thinking about whether my plants are freezing. So I just prefer to wait. But I wanted to make sure that you guys knew what options there are so that you can choose for yourself what works best in the garden. One other thing to consider is that if you start those direct seeded plants later, like I'm going to do, you are going to be hitting into our hot, humid, buggy time of year once those crops start coming in. So, pros and cons. Do you want to cover them or do you want to deal with the bugs and the humidity and fungal issues? It's a tough choice. As far as cold season crops, you're still good to keep planting all those things like arugula, beets, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, celery, Chinese cabbage, collards, kale, kohlrabi, I never know if I'm pronouncing that right, lettuce, mustard, bunching onions, not bulbing onions, but bunching onions, peas, white potatoes, radish, spinach, Swiss chard, and turnips. I would encourage you to start thinking about using your shortest time to harvest varieties for these, or your varieties that are more heat tolerant, especially things that can take 90 days or more. So growing things like Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. Flip over the back of your seed packet and find a variety that has a short days to harvest and try to pick that variety. Or like I mentioned, if you have a more tropical variety or one that just does well in heat, has a heat tolerance, start picking those to plant now. Now let's talk about projects. With January being the coolest month in Florida, I like to plan to do all my big projects this month. The weather is just a lot easier to handle this time of year. So some of the big projects I'm going to be doing is I have to replace all the perimeters around all my trees. So the big camper tree I have out front that I use for chipping up wood, I'm going to completely replace that perimeter, and I'm going to use those big blocks or pavers to create a perimeter around it. I'm also going to be widening the base of my peach tree, which I think is going to be helping me with fertilizing and to keep the grass away from the nutrients meant for the tree. When I first put the tree in, the perimeter was fine, but now that tree has grown exponentially, and so I need that perimeter to be wider. I'm also going to put a perimeter around my palm tree because I'm going to be putting in a pineapple patch. And I do the perimeter so that when my husband cuts the grass or weed eats, he doesn't accidentally hit one of those plants or the palm. I'm also toying with the idea of putting in one more bed. I have a bed that I've never used because I just figured 8 was enough, and it was enough during the summer. But I'm completely full right now. I have a ton of seeds in trays or seedlings in trays, and I have nowhere to put them, and I still have a bunch of stuff I want to grow. So I'm toying with this idea of putting one more in. The spot I want to put the bed in gets a lot of shade during the winter, gets a little bit more during the summer, a little bit more sun during the summer. So I'm thinking it would be a good bed to do like herbs and greens, lettuces during the winter, different kinds of special kales during the summer that can handle a lot of shade. If I do go through with that project, I'm still debating it, but if I do still go through with that project, I will record it so that you guys can see how I fill up a raised bed super cheaply. Besides those projects, I need to prune my blackberry bush and my peach tree. This time of year, while they are dormant, the peach tree is going to be a challenge because I didn't do enough pruning when it was young. So I have to make some big decisions with that. Stay tuned. I will do a whole video on how I'm planning on tackling pruning my peach tree. Besides those, I'll be starting my tomatoes and peppers in the AeroGarden and then transplanting them up until they go in the ground in like late February, early March. I'll probably do some more cuttings too because I'm going to be doing a big push for tomatoes this next spring, because I need to restock all my canned tomato products like salsa, sauces, diced tomatoes. Spring is like the best time to grow lots of tomatoes because you have this long time frame that these plants can grow. Now they're going to head into summer, and summer's going to be rough on the plants, but I should be able to get them healthy enough and enough fruit on them that all they need to do during summer or late spring is ripen. Now let's get into the special tip for the month and the special giveaway. I'm really excited about this. So the special tip for the month is all around those warm season crops that we discussed earlier. It is going to heat up faster than you would think in spring. So I really want to encourage you to really start thinking about varieties that work in spring heat, summer heat. I'm going to put up a list of my favorite Florida-friendly varieties. I have personally grown every single thing on this list, and I can vouch for them. They work in our heat. I'll add a full list in the description, but these are my special ones. This is important for a number of reasons. First, you want to find the varieties that are designed for hot and humid climates so their growing season is extended. Next, you want to get varieties that have certain disease resistance. This is especially true for things like tomatoes and squash. Tomatoes get a lot of blight and squash get a lot of fungal issues. So I'm growing a lot of larger tomatoes designed for our climate like Florade, Mortgage Lifter, and Neptune. For squashes, I'm going to be growing some really fast winter squashes like Honey Nut or ones that are native to our state like Seminole Pumpkin. I had some super amazing results with my Tahitian melon squash. It's not native to here, but it really thrives in our type of climate. And along with the Seminole Pumpkin, it will continue to grow through the whole summer, which is important for squashes, winter squashes in spring, since they take a lot of time to mature. I know it's crazy to be thinking of summer when we're sitting in January, but these plants take a while to grow. And if you want to get a full harvest, spring is where it's at. It's our longest growing period for the warm season crops and where they aren't going to hit a frost. But if you don't take into account the summer climate, those plants will fade super fast in late spring.